And I think when you look at female leaders, the best ones and the ones who work their way up, they are always the ones who are inviting other women to the table. When you get
Alex, welcome to the show.
Yes, thank you for having me.
Awesome. Let's start straight from the beginning. You've had quite a journey in your career, from Pop Sugar to DoorDash to Poshmark, and now a flourishing personal brand of 94,000 followers on TikTok. Can you take us through that journey? What sparked your interest in marketing, and how has it led you to what you're doing today?
Yeah, for sure. So the Pop Sugar mention, first of all, is such a throwback for me. Like, you just reminded me of a whole different era of my life. But even more of a throwback, I think really the root of like my career and where I started stems from the fact that I grew up in Kansas. So I was born there, I was raised there, and I didn't grow up on a farm. That's a question I get a lot, but I did have a very like typical suburban lifestyle, like what exactly you would expect from like a suburb in Kansas. And luckily I was kind of able to travel with my dad, and he had business opportunities in other states. So I was able to experience some different things, some different states, etc. And I think that really drew to me, and I wanted to experience a bit more than what I was experiencing in Kansas. And so when I got the chance to move out to California for college, I like absolutely jumped at it. So I went to school at Berkeley, UC Berkeley, and it was like everything Kansas wasn't times a million. Like, I was constantly meeting new people, taking new classes, being introduced to new jobs. Like, I did not know software engineering was a job until I moved out to California. And so I think Berkeley is where I really started to hone in on that interest in marketing. I took some classes there. I really learned more about like the consumer experience, how to influence people, how to speak to them in order to motivate them to do what you want them to. And I was really, really drawn to that. And I was in a world of like new opportunity being in the Bay Area and being near the tech industry. And so I just started applying to internships, anything that looked interesting to me,
Wow.
anything that I thought that I could maybe do.
What year were you in Berkeley at this time?
So at Berkeley, there's a lot of pressure. You've probably experienced this too, to get an internship as fast as possible. Yeah. So I think I started sophomore year. I couldn't get anything freshman year, summer, but sophomore year on, I was interning all the time.
Wow.
But I just tried different marketing internships. So I've worked in brand, I've worked in social content, lots of different types of marketing. And I actually think that internship experience was super valuable because it allowed me to figure out what I like in a job and a focus area without having to dedicate like an entire career to it. So I was able to experiment and figure out what I liked, and that's what allowed me to get into product marketing. And once I felt like I had some corporate experience, career experience that was worth sharing, that's when I like ultimately just started posting on TikTok to make the career world a little bit more accessible and less intimidating.
Yeah. Oh my God. I relate to you on so many levels. I also grew up in the Bay Area, and there is definitely that pressure. I didn't go to school here. I went to school in LA, but California as a whole has like very similar energy.
Oh yeah. It's like so intense here. Yeah. And I never knew that until I moved out here. Yeah, and immediately people were like, where are you interning? Where are you from? And you would definitely get judgment if you weren't together, quote unquote.
And it's really hard to get an internship when you don't have experience.
So
and
hard.
Pop Sugar was your first internship?
So Pop Sugar was my second internship. I actually did this kind of pretty low-key unpaid internship at first, where
we all got to do it at the start.
You got to grind a little bit.
Unfortunately.
I was paid in leggings because it was like an athletic wear brand. So she would give me free leggings. Honestly, I still wear them now. So I'm like, that was a pretty good deal, I think.
Yeah.
So that was my first internship. That it was unpaid, but it did allow me to get into the door other places, which is, you know, what you want and what's valuable.
Yeah, I mean, all these other places you worked are huge brands that are really cool places to work. So it probably was because you put yourself in that situation to be okay with that unpaid internship, break the cycle of not having experience on your resume, and then you can then at that point accelerate in your career. And now you're literally doing, is it your dream job? Or walk me through that.
That's a really good question. I think product marketing is everything I want it to be and everything that I would be looking for in a career. I really like that worlds that I work within. I think it's a really good blend of being analytical and being creative. So in terms of role, I really enjoy it. I think that I also really like the company that I'm at. I like the people that I work with. So I don't necessarily dream of labor, as they say, but I think I'm in a very good setup right now.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think about this a lot, right? What is this idea of a dream job? And maybe it's not this idea of a dream job we should be chasing, but rather what is this job that we enjoy and provides us the dream life?
Yeah.
And it seems that you're able to do two things, which is have this really cool job and then also really build your personal brand and grow your TikTok. Can you kind of share with us what it's like doing both those things? How do you achieve work-life balance, and how does the job and growing your TikTok complement each other in any way?
Yeah. Yeah. So I agree with your sentiment around the dream job thing a lot. I think it's so hard to find a job that is going to fulfill you in every single aspect. So really focusing on what's going to give you the highest return in a career and in a job is so important. So I do really sometimes struggle with work-life balance still, as I think most people do. I think because I'm focused on two things and I'm so invested in two things, both my career and growing my TikTok, I've fallen into a trap recently of forcing myself to always be productive all of the time. And like, you have to earn your time off. Like, you have to earn your social hours or your just like chilling hours by first checking things off your to-do list and first doing things that are productive. So I think in terms of work-life balance, that's something that I've been kind of working on changing my perspective. But just in general, how I manage it, I really focus on compartmentalizing. So I have my 9 to 5. During my 9 to 5, I'm 100% invested in that. Before, after, I give myself time buckets to dedicate to my TikTok. So I'm thinking through ideas, I'm scripting, I'm recording actual videos. And I think that's kind of the best way to do it, because that allows you to be really invested in what you are focused on at that time without thinking about the other things.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, all of us have gone through the experience, not all of us, but majority of us have gone through the experience of like having a 9 to 5 job, but very few of us have gone, oh, let me actually grow a TikTok account and actually share my knowledge with the world and the things that I'm experiencing on a day to day. Like, that's definitely very unique. And I know me and 94,000 other people are so appreciative of all the content that you give us, but would love to learn more about what really inspired you to start this, and how did you actually come up, or like, where did you get the passion for specifically helping people in their careers and empowering them through that journey?
Yeah. So it really does, again, start with being from Kansas and coming to Berkeley. I think at Berkeley, there's inherently just like this professional development that happens when you're there, not necessarily in classes or formally through the school, but there's such a focus in the school and in the Bay Area on professional development, figuring out how to recruit, optimizing your resume, all of these things. So much so that there are tons of external professional organizations that live on campus and that people join in order to get ahead. So coming to Berkeley, I just was inherently learning all of these things about recruiting, about careers, about corporate life as I went through school. And then I compared that to people that I knew at home in Kansas who had maybe not gone to a school outside of the state, or hadn't just like stayed close to home, essentially. And they hadn't necessarily gotten that same kind of outside professional development. Like, yeah, they knew how to write a resume, how to use LinkedIn, but they didn't have the in-depth knowledge that kind of came with going to Berkeley. And so I was like, that's so frustrating that people don't have these shared experiences and no one teaches us these things. So I started my TikTok just really as a mission to kind of address that and make the corporate world careers corporate world tips, like make those things super succinct and actionable and accessible.
Wow, no, that's so inspiring to hear. Do you have like a special story to share with us, or any moment, or maybe like one of your followers where you connected with that you could share with us?
Yeah, I think the most impactful thing for me is seeing the comments that people took my advice, killed an interview, and like even I've seen people get a job using some of the advice that I've
believe
given
it.
them.
I'm sure.
But that just blows my mind. Like that's
Yeah.
so crazy to me that people are taking these tips and using them in their actual life, and it's having such a positive impact. That's like that's literally what I set out to do. So I think that's the most rewarding thing when I get those comments, and I always try to respond back or like make a video response and be like, woo.
Yeah, I mean, I bet you get so many comments, more comments than you can probably handle. I'm curious how you manage that, and like how do you effectively keep your community engaged?
Yeah. So TikTok is also a little weird because it doesn't show you notifications for all of the comments, which I think is super strange.
I noticed that too.
Yeah, it's on your most recent videos, I guess, but it's frustrating.
I'll sometimes go back to videos and be like, I never saw that comment. I really want to respond to it.
Yeah, or it'll be people that other creators that I know, and I'm like, oh, I would have loved to respond to that. I just didn't see it.
Totally.
So I think that's frustrating. But because of that, what I do is like once a week, twice a week, literally go through my old videos, look at comments, and then I compile them into a spreadsheet of comments that I want to respond to via video or comments that I want to respond, just like text response to. And then I sit down and dedicate time to that, because I think understanding your community and what their issues are, what they want to know from you is the biggest thing when creating content, the most important thing that's going to keep your audience engaged. And I think one thing I've learned is like, if you have to get scrappy, get scrappy.
Yeah.
I, at one point, was doing like free resume reviews where people would email me their resume. I would provide feedback and just like help them with formatting, grammar, everything, just because I knew that was a gap and that's something people needed. But
yeah, and especially the people who need it the most are not really the ones who can afford paying for it. Yeah. So that is so kind that you did that. And
I'm not an expert. I like definitely prefaced my like communications with them like, I'm not an expert. I can provide you what I've learned and stuff, but I think it's just helpful to have someone that's guiding you and putting you on the right track at least.
Yeah, I mean, you definitely going to Berkeley, having all those internships, doing such a cool job today, like, you know enough to really set them in the right direction. So that is really nice of you. I commend you for that. I know how little time we have in our lives, and to find that time, it really comes from a place of like you genuinely and deeply wanting to connect with your audience, which is so good. And you literally made a spreadsheet to respond to comments. Like,
yeah.
I don't think I would ever do that. Like that's a lot of effort, but no, I'm sure your community really like notices that and probably like
I hope so.
I'm sure
I hope they know it's like a mutual, like, I respect you, you respect me, we all are kind of like in it together. That's what I'm going for, at least.
Yeah, totally. Any challenges that you've encountered through balancing a job and growing an account, or just generally challenges that you've experienced in the workforce as like a young woman? Would love to share some stories you have with the audience.
When I first so I will preface this by saying I think I'm at a point in my career where I am surrounded by really uplifting managers, team, people, etc. So I have definitely gotten to that point, but I understand and from early on in my career that it's not like that for everyone, and I understand from having conversations with other females in this industry, it's not like that all the time. I think when I was first starting in my career, I was running into people making a lot of assumptions about me. So people were making assumptions about my ability, my capability, or my competence because of the way that I looked, the way that I spoke, the way that I was from Kansas, like a Midwestern state that everyone says is a flyover state. People just assume certain things about you, especially as a woman. And I think I really just learned that I wanted to prove those people wrong and challenge their assumptions. So navigating that and figuring out how to do that, how to be more confident, how to communicate effectively, how to find a mentor and network in order to prove these people wrong about me is really one thing that kind of ignited my TikTok journey and just like my career and contributed to my career journey in general.
Yeah. What was the hardest part about that journey for you?
For me, it was not having anyone to tell me what to do.
Yeah.
Obviously, my parents are great. They're, they work in business and everything, but they haven't worked in the Bay Area on the same scale that I have. So they weren't much help, honestly. I had peers, but everyone is so competitive when you are in California in the Bay Area. Like,
yeah, I experienced that too. That's so sad, but it's so true.
I know. Especially with other women, you run into that. You run into women that are really uplifting and bring you to the table, or they think everything's a competition. And so I think it's really hard to navigate that and figure out how to help everyone win.
Yeah. I often get this question from others, right? Like how to navigate it. And I feel like there's not a good response here, right? Because you're going to be in so many different situations where the circumstance is going to be different and there is no like one clear-cut answer. But I truly believe if you are focused on yourself and growing your career, and if you're focused on giving back to other people around you and specifically empowering other women, people will see that energy and they won't know how to step on your toes and they won't know how to bring you down because you're so focused on empowerment. And I actually think that's the best way to deal with it is if someone is, putting you down or making you feel less than, especially as you're trying to navigate this like really difficult thing of like getting a job and growing your career is like not easy for anyone, even for seasoned professionals with many years of experience. It's surprising how they're dealing with some of the same things that you would deal with even getting your first job.
Those struggles just hold throughout your career. You get better at dealing with them, but they're always there. And I think when you look at female leaders, the best ones and the ones who work their way up, they are always the ones who are inviting other women to the table. When you get to that level, you see that there is so much power in having other females with you. Like you want to be surrounded by other empowering women.
It's literally just more fun.
Yeah, literally. Women are more fun.
For sure. No, I have a selfish question. So I have been very much of a hopper in my career. I was an engineer, then I was a product manager.
Oh, very cool.
Now I'm a founder. Yeah. What am I doing? I don't know. But
you're doing it all.
I'm trying. And I think it's really interesting that you've been very much on this path of marketing and you've been very focused. And I think there is merit to being focused because you're able to advance faster when you're really like doing one thing and moving on to the next level. So I'm curious like how you were able to find such a deep passion that you want to do that every day and throughout your career. And if you've ever thought about switching to other careers, why did you not go and do that? Or any insight around that would be so helpful to hear.
Yeah, totally. I think for me, I just figured out what I was good at. And honestly, that was marketing. And it's so much more rewarding to work on and in something that you feel like you are good at and you get that internal validation. And I know that's not the case for everyone and it's hard to find that, but I think that's what has allowed me to have so much focus and to really drill down and continue on this career path and feel confident in doing so. I have considered switching careers to being like a product manager, or mostly product manager is what I've considered, but I just feel really confident in the space that I am in, and I don't necessarily think that I could be better at something else. So I'm content with it.
Yeah. No, it's definitely rewarding to be good at something.
I know, that's like
very exciting.
Not the best answer because it's like, I can't tell you, just like be good at it, Like that's not great advice, but I think that's what has happened for me. And so it's the honest answer.
No, I think that is a good answer because I truly believe like you manifest what you want. So if you've decided you want to be in marketing and you want to be good at it, you will be good at it because you're going to wake up every morning and you're going to care about it. You're going to put effort into it. You're going to show up consistently doing the work. If you do all those things, how can you not be good at something, right? Yeah. And then naturally you reap rewards of being good at it. So absolutely. I think that is actually great advice. Maybe I should think about that a little bit after this episode.
I'm sure you're good at all of this. Don't worry.
I actually think that it's impossible to be really good at something when you're unfocused. I think focus is really important to getting good at it. There is no way that I might be a good product manager. I was in product management for about 3 years now, but if I was in it for 6 years, of course, that version of me would be better at it, right? It's the more you work on something, Absolutely. You're naturally going to only grow in it, right? So there's pros and cons to that.
So what made you switch roles or hop around, as you said?
Yeah, I think I just get bored easy, and I'm like, oh, what is it like to be good at this? Or I want to try this. And I think it also comes from a sense of validation, whereas like, especially when I decided that I was like, oh, I should learn how to code and be an engineer. And I think it definitely came from a place of a lot of people in my life basically telling me that my current skills and that my current interests did not make me a good fit for an engineer. And that rubbed me the wrong way. I was like, wait, why not? Like, I don't even know if I want to do that, but I need to now do it to be like, that's not, I can do it if I want.
It's the assumptions again.
Yeah.
It's like, I want to prove you, I know you're wrong, and I want to prove you wrong, and you shouldn't assume these things about people, about roles, about what it looks like to be a certain thing.
Yeah. And I think what we don't realize is sometimes these like little comments from people like get deeply rooted in our subconscious, and it actually is a contributor to imposter syndrome. Because Absolutely. Imposter syndrome just comes from this idea that you are an imposter in a space, and that is just truly a mindset of something you believe is true, and you belong in any space you basically decide to belong in.
Yep.
So I think me multiple times transitioning to different roles, and it comes with a lot of starting from zero and learning something and really putting that pressure on myself to learn it, has made me almost like numb to imposter syndrome, where I was like, well, I've only ever been an imposter,
right?
So this is a normal feeling. And then also like seeing myself do it successfully is like, oh, well, I've done it once.
To yourself.
Yeah. So curious if you've ever experienced imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
And how did you get around it?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I think it's one of those things that everyone experiences, and it's not very much talked about, but it's something that I still deal with to this day on a fairly frequent basis. And I don't think it's necessarily something that I've completely worked past. I think that wouldn't be an honest thing to say, but it's definitely something that I've been focused on giving myself like the small tools in order to be able to navigate and manage those feelings more. So one thing that I started doing is, this is very functional, but like I
love it. Yes, tell us.
I created a praise folder. I don't know if you've heard of it, but it's basically you basically create a folder on your work laptop, and you compile like all of the positive feedback, all of the compliments that you get from your coworkers, from people at work, manager, etc. And you just, when you see it, screenshot it and drop it in your praise folder. And whenever I feel like imposter syndrome at work, I literally just open that folder and take a look at the positive things that I've done and that people have said about me. And it just kind of breaks me out of that negative cycle of thought and grounds me in the fact that like, oh man, I am good at my job. I just need to get out of this mindset.
Wow. That's literally genius. I'm 100% stealing that and
create
doing that.
one. Yeah.
I need that for sure.
Yeah. I've heard like praise folder, smile file, like hype folder. Like you can create and name it whatever you want.
Wait, that's adorable. No, I'm going to definitely do that. And actually, ironically, it's not just for building internal confidence, but if you take that folder and you give it to your manager, literally 1000%. Documenting that proof.
Yeah.
Like, I mean,
I use it for performance reviews as well.
Yeah.
Because it's kind of just a compilation of everything that you've done that has drawn attention or positively impacted your team or your coworkers. So it's a really good tool to leverage for performance reviews as well.
No, that's so true. I actually didn't know this early in my career. I actually learned this much later, right about the time when I was deciding to quit. So I didn't even get to like use these tools. But I wish I knew that earlier. I feel like I would have gotten promoted faster. I would have made more money faster.
Yeah, because it all contributes into thinking like, okay, I do all of this. Like I am worth this at work. You know, I deserve more money. I deserve more praise. Like, you just kind of, it helps elevate you in terms of your thinking.
Yeah.
Another thing for imposter syndrome, I don't know if you ever do this, but I actually try to talk to people about it. So I have some trusted coworkers that I actually, if I'm struggling with this, I kind of ask them and lean on them, like tell them what I'm feeling and have them reassure me, because they're so close to my work and they see what I'm doing and they know that I shouldn't be feeling this way. So it's just positive reinforcement from an outside person, a friend or a coworker, and it's just like, it helps, again, break you out of that negative feedback loop in your own head.
Yeah, I actually relate more to that because I have like an inner circle of other founders who I talk to, and there's like, being a founder is like this volatile emotional roller coaster, and I need like my 5 core people who like can empathize with what I'm doing. It'll literally be like midnight and I'll be feeling sad about something. I'll text them, oh my god, crisis, like SOS. Yeah. Wow, so relatable, right? And it helps so much.
I know, it just helps to talk to people, honestly, because it makes it a lot less isolating. Like, you understand that other people are going through this, but they don't see you the way that you see you.
Yeah, I think when you're in things like going to top school like Berkeley or working at an office, building community around you and like building those relationships is definitely easier. And I think that what we don't realize is that a lot of other people don't have that privilege of community the way that we have had.
Yes.
And I realized that when I quit my job just to go full time on Junshi. I realized that, I no longer have natural community work from school and work. I have to go and build that community myself.
Exactly.
Literally find other founders in the same stage as I am who I get along with to be my support system. So do you have any advice for people who are not naturally surrounded by these support systems where they can go find that for themselves and build those relationships, so they can tackle things like imposter syndrome?
I think that's a really good point. And that's something that I've run into socially, like outside of work as well. But I think, and just in terms of my career, I think networking, it's that buzzword, but I think networking and finding people that relate to you and what you're doing, the way that you've found other founders. So finding tools in order to do that, I think, is the best way to kind of create that community yourself. Yeah,
that's a good point. I hate that networking is such a cringe word.
I know.
I used to think it was so cringe until I didn't network and then felt the consequences of not networking. And now I'm like, oh, so important. Gotta do it in every facet of your life. Networking is important. I think we always talk about networking in the context of like your careers and advancing there. But I think networking beyond that, just for the sake of doing it, so cringe, right? But just doing, you never know how it's going to help you in the future.
Yeah. You never know who you're going to meet that will be so influential on your life, whether it's like helping you get a new job or just guiding you or being a mentor. Like, you just meet people that you could never anticipate will impact you in a certain way. And I think that's the value of networking. Like, you don't have to go into it with such a like, I need a new job, like let's talk until I find a new job. You don't need to go into it with that lens necessarily.
Yeah, no, it's so true. I literally just talked about this on my TikTok recently, where I was like, also, networking is not something that is the same in every context of your life, where how you network actually differs on like different phases of life you are. So when I was in big tech, I felt like I was networking for the sake of networking, which was just showing up for my manager and building relationships with my coworkers. But instead, what I should have done is not do that, because not because that's not bad, but because my goals weren't to get promoted in my company. My goals were to leave and start my own company. And that networking aligns to potentially wanting to get promoted, not necessarily like leaving to start my own thing. What I should have done instead is I should have spent more time networking with the leadership team. They could potentially be my future investors or customers, right? So there's networking, but there's also networking for whatever your current goal is. Sorry, not your current goal. It's networking for your future goal.
Yeah, networking for the future you.
for the future you, which is so important. So I'm curious, how are you networking today for your future self?
Oh my gosh. I mean, I think as you or as anyone does, I get caught up in the current me. It's hard to kind of, it's hard to think about the future you, and especially because I'm very content in my job right now. It's like, oh, I can't even imagine leaving. I can't imagine like what the future is going to bring for me. So I haven't been working towards it as hard as I should be, honestly. I think for me, thinking about it now, what I would want to do is follow more of a path like you. Like, I'm interested in the creator space. I'm interested in potentially becoming a founder of like a digital media company. So why don't I reach out to people that are more in that space rather than focusing on like a product marketing person, because that's my role, but I don't need that guidance anymore. I think I want to think bigger, think about my future me, as we were saying.
And it's so hard to think about your future you, because we can't predict what's going to happen. And oftentimes if our future versions of ourselves of what we want to be is so clear, then we should just go and do that. To be honest, what are we waiting for?
Oh yeah.
I think a big reason why we're not doing it is because, well, we just don't know exactly what that is yet.
Yeah.
So I get it. I think it's still hard for me today.
Yeah. And we were talking about before this podcast even started, like the idea of it's hard to start something when you feel like you're not going to be perfect at it immediately.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that has really held me back with my TikTok initially, and just getting past that mental barrier is so important.
Yeah. No, I like, for context, I was sharing how this is my first ever podcast, and I was like so nervous in the beginning. I was like, I'm sorry if I am gonna be all awkward and fidgety, just like bear with me. And she was like, well, what better way to get good at it than just like try it, start it. Yeah.
I also said this is my first podcast too, so don't worry.
Oh yeah, I was like, that honestly makes me feel so much better, because I've been a guest on a few podcasts in my life, and I think being a guest is scary in a different way, where you're like, well, I want to be meaningful in my words.
Yeah, and I want to give good content.
Yeah, but I feel like as a host, I'm thinking about how do I make sure that I ask the questions that shed actual informational insight to the audience. But
well, I think you're doing a great job of that.
And I love all your answers, so this is great.
We're killing it right now.
Yeah, we're killing it. Cool. So switching gears here, looking at the future, in what ways do you think Gen Z women are shaping the corporate world, and what changes do you anticipate in the future?
Yeah, I think, are you part of Gen Z?
I'm like technically the first year of Gen Z. Okay, so I like to say that I am
too.
Are you 97?
I'm 98.
Okay.
So we're like right on the cusp. But I think I identify with Gen Z more than millennial, honestly.
Me too, I think. Yeah.
But yeah, so I think we just as a generation are so much more willing to talk about and advocate for what is best for us. And I think that's really powerful. That's something that I've noticed about Gen Z. And I think that has the potential to really shift the corporate world, period. Like women now are, with the hybrid work situation, younger women are more likely to articulate like what situation works for them. They're more likely to articulate what type of compensation is fair in their mind, those kinds of things. So I think that's one thing that I've noticed about Gen Z. The other thing is that I think we're going to shift a bit of like the digital working environment, like the hybrid versus in-person versus remote working structure, because I think Gen Z, we grew up with we're like the first generation that grew up having iPhones pretty young, having the internet like young. And
now the new headset, did you see that?
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Oh my god, is anyone ever going to go to the office? Are we ever going to buy monitors?
No.
Laptops?
They're not needed anymore.
I know, literally. So
but I think we've learned how to be online and create relationships online and have that just like happen naturally and still be productive. And so I think that we will kind of shift the environment and teach older generations and show older generations that you can have a productive work experience even if you're just online.
Yeah.
Because we've done it. We've created those relationships and still, worked that way.
That's so true. Yeah. I definitely feel that way as well. And I'm very curious to see how people respond, especially to all of the new stuff coming out.
Yeah.
It's not just, all the cool stuff from Apple. With
it's not just
Air.
like the technology. It's like, how do you work within it and make it work for you?
Yeah.
Another thing about Gen Z I just thought of, I think we are more willing to really show up as our authentic selves at work and actually bring our personality to work. Because at least when I was growing up, and I don't know if you experienced the same, like I was told that leadership looked a certain way and acted a certain way. And if you wanted to get up high at a company or get up high as a founder, you needed to be like this and do this and XYZ. And I think we are a generation where it's like, we're not going to sacrifice our personality for work. Like, if I want to show up in this pink flame sweater to my office, like, I'm going to do it. I love the
sweater. It's so nice.
I'm going to do it. And it's not going to hold me back because I'm not less professional. I'm not less qualified because I'm wearing a pink shirt.
So true. And I think that, if TikTok came out, let's say 5-10 years ago, I'm unclear if that generation would be able to make career content about their job, probably too afraid of showcasing authentically who they are in case their employer sees it or something. Yeah. But we're just like, whatever. Yeah. If you don't like it, we can go work somewhere else.
This is what I want to talk about. Yeah. I have people at work that are actually really supportive of my TikTok.
That is awesome.
They know about it and people mention it and I always cringe, but they're always really like, they feel proud of me and they want advice. Like, it does translate a bit to what I do at work. So
it totally, and you're also genuinely impacting people and helping them in their careers. Like, that is very honorable. If anyone doesn't think that's incredible, you should probably stay away from them anyways.
Yeah, true.
Yeah. Cool. Well, I want to ask you this question. This one I think is going to be something I might ask actually all of our guests. We're going to try it out. But if you could travel back in time, what advice would you give your younger self at the start of your career?
Ooh, okay. So for me, I would tell myself that there is a lot of power in knowing that things will not go according to what you've planned. There's a lot of power in accepting that rather than fighting that. I am a big planner, I set out my goals, I set out what I think my career path is going to be, what my life path is going to be in advance. And when things don't, as they usually don't go to plan, I used to have a tendency at the beginning of my career to have a bit of an internal crisis. And so I think I would just tell myself that there's power in being flexible and pivoting when you need to pivot.
Yeah. No, I'm not even going to add to that. That was a really perfect
Period.
Awesome. And you've worked at like many companies in your journey, specifically for marketing. Anything surprising or unexpected that you learned through that process that maybe those starting out in their careers could watch out for or would be helpful for them to know?
Yeah, I think mine is specific to marketing, but one thing that I realized is that marketing is so incredibly different. There are so many different facets of it and different roles within it. So, for example, I worked in brand, I worked in content, social, now product marketing, and I didn't like the first three. And I think people will run into a lot of trying a role in marketing, not liking it and being like, oh, marketing's not for me, I guess. I need to find something else to do.
Interesting.
But there are so many different types of roles within this world that I think you shouldn't just give up if the root of your interest does lie in that consumer-focused messaging, positioning, creative.
So true. I think the best way is just to be really open to trying different things.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people will say back at that, like, oh, like I want to try different things, but like I can't get an internship. What advice would you give to them? Because I believe there are other ways
Yeah.
that you can experiment and trial different jobs and better understand your skills and what you're looking for outside of that.
Yeah, absolutely. I lean heavy on side projects.
Projects, yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot you can do that is not formally recognized, but you learn so much from it. You take on a project, you start your own social media channel and show that you can grow a following in X number of days, for example.
That's great advice. Everyone note that down.
Note that down. But don't come too close for my niche. Just kidding. So I think that is a great thing. I also think you can, if you want to formally bolster your resume, you can focus on certifications or courses. Like those are so accessible these days you can leverage what you learn, and it just adds more validation, even if you don't have super formal experience from an internship or an actual job. You can leverage those things.
Have you ever taken these courses or have any you recommend?
So in terms of where I usually look at Udemy, Coursera, or just like LinkedIn courses. I think LinkedIn has a lot of certifications as well, so that's valuable. I've taken a couple courses not focused on marketing, more like when I was considering a PM, I was learning about SQL and that kind of thing. So I took some courses on that, but I think that they all have really valuable information on marketing courses as well.
Yeah, but like you said, best way to learn is just start an
Just
account
do
and
it.
try it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anything that you have been mildly interested in potentially doing in your life, do it and turn it into a side project and put it on your resume and speak about it in interviews.
Yeah. I do a lot of hiring, and I care way less about how many years of experience you have and way more about like, what have you built? What have you done? It shows initiative. It shows that you've like actually learned through trying real things rather than, behind a course.
Yeah.
So I think that's great advice.
Yeah. You don't hide behind a job title necessarily. I think side projects and these kinds of experiences show that you are an actual doer and you make things happen, which is really what ultimately people and companies are looking for.
Yeah, so true. I'm curious, you said for a while you were considering product management.
Yes.
I'm curious why you decided not to that, or is that a later part of your career?
I think I've not ruled it out. Honestly, I think it could be potentially a later part of my career. I like the creative aspects of marketing, honestly. I like the campaigns that I create. I like being more, I guess, speaking with consumers more and understanding them more. I know product managers do that, but I guess in a slightly more technical sense. So I think maybe once I've maxed out what I feel like I can learn from marketing, that would be a perfect pivot for me, because I interact with product managers now. I see their role and I could bolster my skill set, use certification, take courses, etc., to become a bit more technical and then ultimately go down that route.
Yeah, don't fix what's not broken. If you love your job, honestly amazing.
Yeah, but then if I reach a point where I'm not learning, I'm not growing, I'm not interested in it anymore, I think it sounds like you are a person that's always kind of pursuing that constant learning, and I feel like I'm the same way. So, when that stops, it's time to move on, I think.
Yeah, no, I get it. Would you ever pursue full-time content creation?
I think the dream for me is maybe not full-time content creation, but full-time founder as well.
Yeah.
Of a company that creates resources, creates like more formal resources, more formal educational elements that really tie to what I'm doing with these tips and bite-sized content, but really in a more flushed out way. I think I want to do that more than just focus on creating content. Basically create like a larger scale empire that's focused on career and corporate life and making those things more accessible to a wide variety of people.
Yeah.
Like that's what I'm passionate about and what interests me. So I think that will ultimately end up being my goal. It's just figuring out how I can do that on a day-to-day basis and get paid for it and, be able to quit a 9-to-5 job.
Yeah, no, that resonates totally.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm on a similar path.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it sounds like your mission sounds and what you're doing with Genchi is very similar to what I try to do. And so I think we really are complementing each other in that way.
Yeah, totally. And I try to bring guests that, help elevate Genshi's mission and Genshi's brand. So
absolutely.
Definitely was a very specific reason that I brought you on here, that being that.
You're like, that's the whole point of you being here.
Yeah, that's cool. I mean, I think and you've been in tech basically for the majority of your career. Yeah. I think a big part of being really good at your job, no matter what it is in tech, is really keeping up with the new technological improvements and advancements and things that are coming out. How do you personally keep up with that? That, and also, how do you personally keep up with how the job market and the industry is changing to make sure you're delivering the best content to your audience?
Yeah, for tech, I think you have to understand that you should seek out tech-specific news outlets and resources. You will hear the big things that happen maybe on the news, on TV, but if you really want to be tapped into the tech industry, you need to take time to seek out like the very specific news sources that are people in tech who are writing about tech. So I follow a lot of tech-based newsletters. I like the Marketing Morning Brew series. I think that they're really good. And, other creators that are focused on the tech industry, blogs. And then I think up until recently, I used Twitter as a big tech news source because it's very...
Twitter's great,
it's very big in tech. I think it's shifted a little with all the disruptions and everything.
Yeah, we won't talk about that here.
But I think it's still a really solid tech news source. And in terms of like staying up with jobs and markets, I think I see a lot of those are more typical topics that I see online and read about. I also try to stay, like we were talking about before, really tapped into what's going on with my community. So are they talking about the job search being extra hard right now? Like what's happening in their worlds? Even if I'm not necessarily recruiting for a job right now, I understand from them and via them what's going on.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Cool. Well, I know a lot of our listeners are creators themselves or aspiring creators. Do you have any tips for people who want to use their platform to talk more about professional topics or talk more about their job?
Yeah, I think, first of all, I would say tap into your own, like I do, tap into your own career experience. Talk about what you've gone through, what you've learned, everything. You can generalize it if you need to, but I think people really resonate with hearing specific stories and examples of what you've gone through. So I think that's the main piece of advice. I also would caution that I think our niche in particular with career development and professional development can lead to a lot of burnout because typically you have like a 9 to 5 and then you're also creating content around your work life and your career. And so you never really break away from that career mindset, that work mindset. So I would say understand that what you're doing is really impactful and it's worth it, but find ways to make it sustainable for you and make sure that you're not just burning yourself out from both content creation and your 9 to 5 or regular job.
Yeah, that's so true. Wait, I'm literally experiencing that right now.
Really?
Yeah.
We should talk more about it.
I know we should. I think what is, I mean, I don't have a 9 to 5. I have basically an indefinite stopping time because I'm a founder.
Even more of a grind.
Yeah. And making videos is really important for me because it's giving back to the community that I'm nurturing through my company. Right. So obviously I do believe that's a really important part of my day to day. And in a different way than say someone who has a 9 to 5 and talks about it, it's still very much because I have that job rather than it's besides the fact that I have that job.
Yeah.
And so I really resonate with the fact that it is kind of this like extra layer of things you're self-assigning yourself, basically.
Yeah, self-assigning is so true. Yeah.
Because you're like, I need to make a video today. Like,
they're all self-imposed deadlines and self-imposed rules, but that's even more powerful in some ways because if you miss them, you're letting yourself down.
Which is so much worse.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, when I was working And I would like often let my manager down. Like, I like didn't really think about it that much.
Yeah.
Oops, I tried.
You basically correct it and then move on. But if it's yourself, you just internalize that guilt.
Seriously. Yeah. No, I totally do. So that makes sense. How often do you post and when do you post?
Yeah. I'll say my posting schedule has changed since I first started. When I was initially starting to grow, I was posting 2 to 3 times a day typically. And that's when I think that definitely contributed to kind of like my exponential growth over a certain period of months. Now that I'm a bit more in it and I'm focused on other things like trying to create resources, trying to do other things as well, I try to post 1 time a day, but I also try to be really intentional about what I'm posting. So I don't just always post BS if I don't have good content in the drafts. Like I try to be really intentional about that. In terms of when I post, typically post at 8 a.m. Pacific time. I'm going to give you the exact details.
Yes. I'm so
usually
curious.
at like 8 a.m. Pacific time and then around 3 p.m. Pacific time. So it's like, I guess my audience when they're kind of waking up, doing their scroll, and then when they're winding down work and a little bit bored and doing their scroll. That's at least what I think is going on.
So I imagine that you're like filming and editing outside of the 8 a.m. and the 3 p.m. You're more like preparing it and then you go post it.
Yes. Oh, yeah. So I prep my content during the weekends for basically the whole week. And yeah. So I come up with ideas throughout the week, like the week before. And then on Friday, I will like script content if it's a more in-depth video or whatever that is needed. And then I actually create the content and then I edit the content all on the weekend. And I have my schedule going into next week. And obviously, like if I have an idea that I want to record during the week, I do that and I post that. But it's streamlined my life a lot to not have to think day of like, oh, what do I want to post today? I need to get a video out.
I should probably listen to the advice. I'm never up at 8 a.m., so that might be my first blocker to following this. I'm not even going to tell you my schedule because it'll give you a heart attack.
Oh, man. I bet.
So disorganized.
I'm like a morning person. Are you?
I'm definitely a night person.
Up late?
I'm up late. I sleep in.
Hey, everyone has their certain time periods where they're most effective and productive.
Yeah, actually, ironically, so I actually just moved back from New York.
I know. I was going to ask you about that.
Yeah, and I actually never adjusted. I was on PST time basically my entire 2 years there because the New York lifestyle is nighttime.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So even if I tried, it wouldn't work.
So
I mean, growing up in California my entire life, my body is locked into PST till the end of time. You could not
make the change, yeah.
Yeah, so.
But being back must be a little hard then because people like PST means people are up and at 'em when you're.
Yeah, it totally is. It's all funky. But then that's the funny thing about being a founder is you can wake up at 12 and sleep at 4 a.m. and it's your own schedule.
You set your own schedule, I think.
Yeah. Well, thank you for your time and sharing.